It's been said that at one time a squirrel could have traveled from the East Coast to the Mississippi River without touching the ground. In southern Illinois, that squirrel would have traveled through a forest canopy of mostly oak trees. Oak dominated forests have been in southern Illinois since just after the last ice age. During all that time, oaks have persisted because, unlike many other tree species, oaks can survive most forest fires. Thus, large scale natural fires and those set or caused by Native Americans helped maintain oak forests in southern Illinois for millennia.
Fire is kind of like the big filter. Keep some of the species in a lower numbers, lower densities, and allow some of our more harder seeded species like oaks and hickories to prosper a little bit more.
Evidence of what our forests still look like 200 years ago comes from surveyors' notes from the early 1800s. Witness trees, chosen by those surveyors to mark land corners, were predominantly big oaks. White oaks on south slopes, red oaks on north slopes, post and blackjack oaks on the driest sites. Those oak forests provided food and shelter for most of the wildlife in southern Illinois. Everything from deer and turkey to timber rattlesnakes and bobcats. Oak forests also fueled both migrating and breeding birds, and they once supported elk, black bears, and cougars too. But those oak forests, which were relatively open and easy to walk through, looked a lot different than the forests in most of southern Illinois today, mostly because fire has been kept off the landscape since the 1930s.
Fire, the big factor that has been missing from most of our forests for 60 to better part of 80 to 100 years in many spots.
In the 1930s, the Forest Service began to institute a policy of total fire suppression, and the Civilian Conservation Corps was put to work building fire breaks and fighting fires, including here in southern Illinois. Other federal land management agencies quickly followed suit and joined the campaign to eliminate fire from the landscape. Fire suppression efforts were successful. Too successful.
We thought, all fire is bad at that time. And we've seen the cascading effects throughout the ecosystem. Without fire, we've seen an almost complete cessation of oaks being allowed up into the canopy because they are just being outcompeted by shade-tolerant species in the absence of fire.
Walk into an Illinois forest today, even in the middle of a sunny day, and you might feel like you're in a dungeon. That's because, in the absence of fire, shade-tolerant tree species, like beech and maple, have begun to take over the forests, and oak trees are not regenerating.
Historically, fires would have burned through the understory and would have knocked back a lot of that beech and maple invasion. These oak forests have a dense canopy and a lot of shade on the forest floor. And so because of that shade, we lack that understory regrowth of trees, those plants and grasses and shrubs that would have been in that understory.
Today, oak saplings make up just 1% of young trees in some forests, while many of the mature oaks are reaching the end of their lifespans. In fact, southern Illinois oak forests may convert to beech maple forests in the next 30 years. This situation poses a near-apocalyptic threat to the whole oak forest ecosystem that also includes colorful wildflowers and songbirds.
Nobody has anything against beech trees and maple trees. They are quite common and they belong in these forested ravines that we have in southern Illinois. But the oak forests are very important to a whole suite of species that aren't necessarily served by the beech and maple community. So we know that oak trees, for instance, have support an insect fauna that is much more diverse than the beech and maple trees. So studies have shown that over 500 species of caterpillars, which are basically versions of moths and butterflies, over 500 species of caterpillars are found on oak trees, compared to half of that number that are found on maple trees, and then a half again that number that are found on beech trees. So if you're an insect-eating bird in the springtime or the summer trying to feed your young, oaks are very important. If we lose those oaks, it spells, sort of tough times for that whole suite of migrant songbirds that have been coming to this forest since this forest has been around. The oak trees and the hickory trees produce a heavy mast in the form of acorns and nuts that are also very important to lots of wildlife. So woodpeckers and turkeys and deer and squirrels, and some of the more recognizable and common species are also very dependent on the fruits of the oaks and hickories.
The good news is that collaborations between biologists and foresters are leading to a shared vision of how to save oak forests in southern Illinois.
The cooperation in the last 15, 20 years has been phenomenal here.
One of our guiding principles is to work with partners and work across boundaries, because if we don't all work together, we're still not going to achieve the total ecosystem health for southern Illinois that we want.
There is agreement that effective restoration and management can include some overstory tree removal, mid-canopy thinning of small trees and invasive species, and the use of prescribed fire.
Our goal is to encourage sunlight and those plants that come along with light. With sun comes life.
It's treating the invasive plants, it's applying prescribed fire, it's harvesting carefully and selectively where it makes sense. It's trying to do those things that work back towards our healthiest ecosystem, our healthiest forest.
At the nearly 1,000-acre demonstration site in the Trail of Tears State Forest, these management techniques are being employed. The IDNR is establishing how to best use cutting, thinning, and fire to save that oak forest. They have also placed great interpretive signage at the site, and the public is encouraged to visit and learn about what's happening there.
We have a 925-acre demonstration area where we've looked at a different combination and sequence of management actions to help encourage more sunlight on the forest floor.
Let the Sunshine In is a campaign that in 5 words paints a very vivid picture about what we're trying to accomplish.
The ultimate goal would be that we have a system that's more open, that's more beneficial for wildlife, and that we can regrow some of our oak trees and have a system where we have oak trees in the overstory, but also oak trees in the understory that are going to reach the canopy in the future.
But if the oak forests of southern Illinois are going to be saved from conversion, it will be with the help of private landowners, who own the majority of the forested acres in the region.
If we're going to really treat the ecosystem in a holistic way and at a meaningful scale, it have to involve private land.
Ecology, it doesn't really follow just the your invisible lines of ownership and boundaries. So, if we're not all in it together, nature preserves or Forest Service natural areas, they need the help with the public, to manage as well.
There's a patchwork of state, federal, and private land, and all those lands need to be managed and managed well in order to benefit the resource, the wildlife, and the overall ecosystem. So the more landowners we can get that buy into managing their land sustainably and helping to improve the habitat, the better the overall landscape will be for wildlife and for the ecosystem.
Fortunately, most landowners want to be good stewards of their land, and there are resources available to help them keep their oak forests healthy.
God's creation, take care of it.
I think that's the best part about it, is having landowners like Jim who are active, interested, and good stewards of the land.
The conversion and loss of oak forests in southern Illinois is an invisible problem to many people, but solving this problem is imperative. Thankfully, saving oak forests enjoys bipartisan support. And while saving our oak forests won't be easy, working together, we can make it happen.
We're gonna let the sun shine in, create a brand new day. Shady days are over, the sunshine's here to stay. We're gonna let the sun shine in, but there's work we need to do, and together we can do it. Together, me and you, we're gonna let the sun shine in, create a brand new day. Shady days are over, the sunshine's here to stay. We're gonna let the sun shine in, but there's work we need to do, and together we can do it. Together, me and you. Together we can do it. Together, me and you. Together, me and you. Together, me and you.